All right, everybody. Welcome to the Rough Report. I am Jimmy Ruffian, reporting to you live from downtown Toronto. And we have a few topics to cover today. First and foremost, we are going to be talking a little bit more about the election, getting a little deeper into the policies and platforms of the different parties. Mainly the big three. We're going to be getting into a little bit more of the lesser known parties next week. I'll be talking a little bit more about that later. And of course, if you are in the chat, let us know you're here. I'm trying out the new chat widget. We can see your comments on the screen. I hope I don't end up somehow regretting that. So, yeah. I'm trying that thing out, seeing how that works out. All right, so let's get into it, I guess. Get that music down. So yeah, it is now September. Holy crap, this year that's taken forever also seems to be flying by. Oh, God. And now we got an election on our hands. Isn't that exciting? We have to, we're doing this election thing in this pandemic now because, as we talked about last week, Justin Trudeau decided that the projections for him were looking good, that he was going to get 15 more seats if he were to call an election and or make calling an election a thing that would happen. Prime Minister just can't do that on his own. There's a procedure to that, I think. Now, according to polls, it's not looking like it's so hot for him. But like I said last week, when you're talking about those kind of projections in Canada, a lot of the time they have a tendency to stick. Maybe it's not 15 seats, but I still would remain steadfast that the Liberals, barring some sort of like major impact, maybe something like really impactful happens in the debates, but you know that can only swing votes so far. Not everybody watches those. Not everybody is particularly concerned about those. So yeah, there's just a lot of factors to consider. But what I'll be getting into the poll stuff actually a little bit later. So give me a minute to first pull up. Damn, I wish I had my water in here. Getting dry mouthed already. Okay, where's my screen? All right. So first we got the NDP's website here. And, I suggest you read it over for yourself. We're going to be touching on a couple of main points and how they compare to the other parties. And of course, I'm starting with the NDP because, full transparency, they are my first choice. Jagmeet Singh is my first choice. Because to me, they stand as the most leftist party that is in a position to actually impact some sort of change, right? Even if they don't form official government, for them being the opposition, especially depending on if it's a liberal minority, for example, being forced to work with the NDP to fulfill some of these crossed over interests that they have that could pay off in the average Canadian citizen's favor, it could be ultimately a beneficial thing. Maybe a little too incremental and reformist and, slow considering some of the crises that we're under. But, that said, I'm still looking at it as a net positive there, right? Oh, excuse me. So yeah, they have quite a bit written out here. They actually like take the time, like even their opening statement here. Just read it really quickly. You know, in every corner of the country, families are worried about jobs, the health of our loved ones, and the public services that everyone counts on. The past 18 months, speaking of the pandemic, obviously, have shown that Canadians confront any challenge when we have to, when we choose to, and when we come together. It's also shown us that thanks to the decisions of the Liberal and Conservative governments, many of the supports that we rely on just aren't there when we need them. If we want different results, we need to make different choices. I like how they put that in bold letters too. What I almost wish it said instead is if we want difficult results, we have to make difficult choices, or different results, we have to make difficult choices. Yeah, the results themselves don't have to be difficult, just difficult to achieve. It would be the goal, I guess. But because that's my thing, like, as although they give us like a little bit of like I think a little bit more of a strong sales pitch in that way. I feel like Jagmeet Singh and the sort of approach that he has is that of a little bit more of something that's like humane and transparent. And you know, maybe I'm being a little too projecting some sort of altruism there or something like that, I guess. But you know, that said, when we compare this to some of the other statements and the policies and platforms and how they're presented by the other parties, there is so many P's. Um, when you compare those things, you see there's a bit of like a contrast there, and I think that says something about the um, you know, spirit and intentions that someone ultimately has, right? So yeah, there's a lot of detail here. When you click learn more on any of this stuff, there's a lot of things there. But what I want to point out is like a lot of the stuff that they're talking about here hasn't really changed a lot in terms of the NDP's main stances. This is stuff that they've always been talking about, that they've always been mentioning, that they've always been fighting for, and considered a priority. And now suddenly, you're seeing the other parties start to, like, namely the Liberals and the Conservatives, latch on to these narratives, or same promises, or recognizing the same economic woes and kind of appealing to that sense of sort of a centrist or sort of a left wing populism, right? Sorry, I've been really tired today. I've been trying to wake up all day. I've had like 2 pots of coffee, and I still feel just knackered. So in reconciliation and things like that, again, like all platforms, environment, things like that. Um, from the Liberals in the past, we've gotten a lot of big promises on the one thing I fortunately don't see here is election reform. I think they realized that when they sort of lost the popular vote the last time, especially, but still gained enough seats to remain in power, that they especially recognize that maybe the weird system that we currently have isn't so much in their favor of changing. But so yeah, unfortunately, none of them are talking about election reform right now. But granted, there are a lot more problems, and there's a lot of things they are obviously talking about here that are quite important. And one of the big ones, and almost like to a degree, I was annoyed that it seemed like such a big thing in terms of the how you say just like main focus that seemed to be coming out of the gates of this election is was housing and what they were going to do about affordable housing. And one of the things that I liked about what the NDP is saying here and what their breakdown of it is that they recognize that while we need to do things to give Canadians relief now and kind of have these sort of emergency relief efforts to immediately alleviate like the stress on renters and the fact that so much of their income, 30% or more, for so many Canadians is too much of their income to be spending every month on rent, and that these prices are getting out of control, and that there needs to be immediate relief there, and that's something that they recognize. But they are quick to mention that they're, these are sort of short-term goals, right? That there's other long-term goals that need to happen along with this in order to make sustainable housing and housing a human right ultimately something that can actually be accomplished, because you can't, realistically, you just can't snap your fingers and have sustainable housing, right? It's a system that would take many years to be built, right? And that's something that I think they openly recognize in their language here. And it's a shame that we don't have a sort of egalitarian thing in our media for all the parties to be able to have the space and the ability and the fair platform to express their views equally without it being so dominated by the Liberals and Conservatives, with the NDP just sort of like right behind on the representation there. And yeah. Here, sorry, I'm just going to be right back in a second. I need that glass of water. Bear with me a second, folks. Here. Okay, I think I'm good now. All right. Let's get rid of the duck. Where were we? Oh, yeah, the NDP page. There we go. Oh, it feels so much better now. Thank you. Thank you for putting up with that while I had to run and get a glass of water there. So anyway, yeah, and specifically, I like this use of language here, a New Deal. I like that a little bit of a nod and a wink there. So yeah, I just, I might be a little bit biased, but I happen to think in terms of their proposal and how they're presenting it on their website here, and of course in Jagmeet Singh's overall kind of like language and demeanor, I appreciate a lot of what the NDP is doing and feel they have a superior thing going on over there. I just wish, like I was saying, that there's a little bit more fairness in terms of how all the parties are represented in the media. I think they would have a lot better a thing going for them if that weren't such a factor. But that said, let's move on to the Conservatives. And it's like Canada's recovery plan. I like how the immediate framing, and this is always something that like the Conservatives do. It's always like this sort of snide thing. They're always like taking something back. They're always like, presenting themselves as these valiant rebels for the average person, when they're just like the ultimate purveyors of like a capitalist status quo, right? It's kind of hilarious that like this is always the pattern with them. The recovery plan. We gotta recover. Sure, they could be talking about the pandemic, but they're just talking about years of Trudeau. Because again, even outside the context of a pandemic, this is always like the language. And of course, the interesting use of language to secure the future. But, not to make it seem too white supremacist, they have some diversity going on in the photo there. They can't be, dog whistling too hard. But yeah, overall, like this is kind of what you get on their front page. A few like bits of news, and then their donate button. And what is this? Together we will rebuild our economy and get Canada heading in the right direction. It's that vapid, empty. Like again, comparing it to Jagmeet Singh, what we're presented with here is this vapid, empty fluffiness that it's not really saying anything ultimately. Then it's just together we do stuff good and win money economy. It's like the liberal one is hilariously like I think it's actually even worse than this one in terms of just how vapidly here I'm going to turn this over to the big screen, how vapidly like political it is. I don't know how you describe it, like just that it's like a Politicobot 9000 spits out political language, and this is what you get kind of stuff. And yeah, the NDP's presentation and their approach just isn't like that. They're actually like in their main statements talking about the real problems that they want to approach, not just together we build good, yes. And it's like people should be offended by this stuff by now, right? Like they should know that they're being a bit like I don't know, like patronized or something. It's just I don't know why. I don't know if you find it as funny as I do, but I just think it's pretty hilarious. And again, they're like speaking to housing, they're coming out with their own plan with housing too that surprisingly comes off as a bit center left. And I think that's sort of the presentation that O'Toole is trying to go for here, is that he is the softer conservative. He is the a good alternative to Justin Trudeau, because what appeals to people in Justin Trudeau is he comes off as, a nice, well-meaning guy. And they don't want the snide, snarky, conservative baby man that was in Andrew Scheer. So they're trying to present a much softer conservative face here by having a lot of policies that, yeah, appear fairly liberal. And I think there's like a few reasons for that, namely like the thing I just mentioned. But not only that, is they like recognize the economic reality of what people are facing that can't be ignored. But what we saw in the NDP, what I was saying when they were breaking down, say, their housing policy description, recognizing that yes, Canadians need help now, but this isn't the ultimate plan. This isn't the thing that we're going to like carry on doing forever. We have to actually have a long-term strategy that is sustainable and provides people with housing in a good ongoing way. Not just helping them buy homes and that sort of thing, or an ongoing plan that just like expands the landlord class and those sort of solutions, which is much what your more center left and liberal side of things is proposing. They want to make it easier for you to get to buy a home, but that's more the language surrounding on it. There's no real language about ultimately regulating housing and how they're going to make this a sustainable system so people don't fall into these traps. And legitimately making it a human right. You don't see the ongoing plan in that. It's just sort of appealing to I guess a sort of base instinct in what people need now. And again, recognizing this political moment and how, yeah, coming off as your kind of like austerity driven conservative isn't necessarily the best angle, although they promise to balance the budget, which is the most, I hate that sort of talk because national debts and balancing the budget and stuff like that and all the hand wringing about that, it's mostly just like nonsense, and none of that stuff ultimately matters. And if they were legitimately worried about fixing it, they would develop some of the policies that, say, the NDP is fighting for, where you're basically taking the excessive wealth of the upper classes and the uppermost classes and appropriately taxing it and redistributing it through social systems. But that's not something that's going to be in the ultimate conservative ethos, right? So, yeah, like I was saying, the liberal one I think is pretty funny. Like just the opening statement here. Our plan, the slogan too, forward for everyone. It's just like, oh man, it so recalls the Simpsons line. Like every election, everybody makes the Simpsons reference to Kang and Kodos running as Bill Clinton and Bob Gore, I think it was. And yeah, and like but so sorry, this is what the liberal quote here says. Team Trudeau delivers a real plan to move Canada forward for everyone. This is the future we're fighting for. We can't go backward. We have to keep moving forward. And together, we have to do the hard work to build a better Canada for everyone. Like every statement is punctuated for everyone. And like it's the kind of like a traditional Trudeau appeal, I guess, in that he likes appealing to the sense of diversity that Canada has, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing, but it's a lot better than dog whistling about the opposite, obviously. But it's just it's the sort of ham-fisted thing that he doesn't ultimately seem to stand up for in a lot of ways, like how we've seen him sort of fail the indigenous population over and over again for the past while. But so like, what everyone are you really talking about ultimately? Um, so yeah, and the Kang and Kodos thing. Yeah, we can't go backward or can't go forward, but twirling towards freedom. It was something like that. Oh, now I can't remember the line. But yeah, like the fact that it's so like it's like a satire of itself in terms of like political speak, and it's just so like vapid and empty. And yeah, it's just like the sterile sort of lazy approach to campaigning and just saying the things and doing the moves and doing the dance uh, in the routine that is so tired that keeps going between the conservatives and the liberals. And again, with the liberals' plans, they're coming out with the housing initiatives and stuff like that that they could have been doing for the past while. Like, but this is what blows my mind about a lot of this stuff that's been like added to the liberal policy is all the stuff that he was promising before to expand on and to do better on and to improve upon has ultimately not been done. It's almost been the opposite. Like, instead of getting clean water to the indigenous, we bought a pipeline, stuff like that. It's, you can't help but to feel like all of this is disingenuous. And I think that's sort of why we're seeing sort of like the idea that Trudeau was going to get those 15 seats suddenly seeming to slip from his fingers. It's just like this sense of like, what are you talking about, man? Like, I think a lot of Canadians just haven't seen the results, and now we're seeing all these promises that are akin to what is appealing about the NDP, and just not and just sort of tagging it on there. And how are we supposed to buy that by now? Child care, care for seniors. That's a couple things, something that the other parties didn't touch on. But a cleaner, greener future. Again, where is that? Where is the evidence of a cleaner, greener future that you have been able to display and do so far? Like, if you say you must require a majority to make these plans happen, but yet a lot of these plans are so akin to the very things that the NDP would like, what is the problem with working with them in order to make those things happen? It's just there's something so disingenuous about everything Justin Trudeau is, right? And yeah, I don't know if that's going to ultimately pay off for him. Again, I think like he's going to end up my still, like I said, holding by the prediction that he's going to end up with more seats by the end of this thing. But there's definitely, I think, a certain like mystique that's been lost about Justin Trudeau. I think most people are willing to admit they'll take him over a conservative any day. I think I would too. But yeah, because, well, especially even with the conservatives leaning into the center-left policy that is usually occupied by the liberals, I ultimately don't see them doing a lot of that stuff. Like, you may be talking that this is Aaron O'Toole's platform, but this is the same party that it was. I'm talking about the Conservatives, just to be clear. This is the same party that they've always been for the past while, and their history has shown that they're interested in privatizing as much as they can, including our healthcare. They're interested in cutting services. They're interested in when they talk about balance the budget, but without cutting anything. that's pie in the sky nonsense, that the economy is just going to grow and that's how we're going to pay for this stuff. They're just scared to death of talking about raising taxes when, again, the NDP is kind of transparent about that. I feel Jagmeet Singh has said on a number of occasions, yeah, we're going to tax the ultra rich. Something needs to be done there. And so, yeah, like he's the only one that seems to be kind of transparent on that level, or is just willing to say it rather. So, yeah, that's where we're at. There's no talk in the Liberal platform here, conveniently, about pharmacare or dental care, which is something that they've always promised. Expansion on mental health, great. I think what would help a lot of people with their mental health would be if they had pharmacare and dental care. Like most of the problems that we're seeing in regards to mental health, of course, are like real problems, but I think they're exasperated, and the amount of stress that people feel on an ongoing basis that exasperate these problems are very much caused by their economic circumstances, and the fact that they can't get care and feel stable in other parts of their lives. That affects you mentally in a big way. If you have other resources to alleviate that stress, you're going to do better and feel better, right? But anyway, yeah, the like just vapid emptiness of the liberal and conservative stance and appearance and platform and persona. It's so it's just like a cardboard cutout of a person, you know. It's really something. Look, we could take a quick minute to look a little deeper at what their housing policy is. Read more about our comprehensive plan. They apparently lay it out a little more in detail here, but from what I'm seeing here is, again, it's all about buying a home, right? And that sounds great, but this does nothing to help the most destitute people now, the people who are most in crises, the people who need it the most. There's no real pitch to them here. It's very much a sort of liberal thing of, the people who, if they just had, up to $30,000 in relief to buy their first home, that they'd be able to. There's people that even given that would be the prospect of being able to have a home, buy a home, and work, and et cetera, is still so far out of their grasp that you are appealing to a certain subsect of people that still have the access to the kind of funds that would help them with that sort of down payment, let's say, assuming that's a down payment they're talking about. Yeah. So overall, I guess to kind of like cap this subject off, Jagmeet Singh, like I said, while currently has my vote, he needs to do more to appeal as an alternative to the status quo of the liberal conservative swap, which is funny. Speaking of that, speaking of liberal conservative swap, and what I was sort of saying in O'Toole's presentation of being a little more center left. Here, I'll show you this. Cam Scott of the Canadian, the Communist Party of Canada, that is, showing this headline, Aaron O'Toole, Socialist Crusader. The policies put forth by the Conservatives are serious, sensible, and pro-worker. They're also impressive when put next to an anemic NDP platform. Anemic NDP platform? I wonder what they mean by that. What is anemic in a platform? Like I was just saying, their platform seems a little bit more robust and substantial than anything else these clowns are giving us, but whatever. So anyway, as Cam Scott says here, it's true that it's true that O'Toole's falsely populist rhetoric sounds more class conscious than the NDP has for decades. But as the right swoops in on topics abdicated by the center left, one might ask, why is it that parties of capital can swap places so easily? That's an interesting question. That they can just be opportunistic and looking at, and as he says, falsely populist rhetoric. It sounds more class conscious than the NDP, but that is the design here, right? That's sort of I don't know. It's kind of a classical liberal or conservative move in a way to appeal to the working man. But yeah, I wouldn't be fooled for a second in thinking that any conservative, like we know this party, we've seen this party throughout the decades. We know what they do. we know the people that largely occupy it. We know the people that have been working in that party and representing that party and being members of that party and what their political project is. We know that. There's no way around it. So to take this idea that O'Toole is going to be the sort of like working class savior it's laughable. It's you got to know that there's a real issue there. And yeah, I would agree with Cam here in that the NDP is lacking in the rhetoric around workers' rights. And of course, I would commend a person who's espousing communist ideals to be in favor of working class rights. That's one of their main selling points. And actually, I'm going to be talking about that a little bit more with Cam next week on the show. Yeah, there he is. That's Cam Scott of the CPC. I'm actually going to be giving him an interview next week, and that's going to be taking place on Wednesday, just for scheduling sake, because we're going to be chatting live. So I have not really had a whole lot of experience with the Communist Party of this country. I just I don't really know a lot of people who are supporters. I don't really know much about them outside of my understanding of communist theory, but there's a million ways you can slice that. There's a million ways to approach that, and some of which I, as I talked about on the show before, I personally find perhaps problematic, and I wouldn't agree with them. But on the same sense, a lot of the majority of the leftist values that are idealized within the communist ideal, I would be heavily in favor for. So, we're not going to take the time to argue whether, communism works in the real world, and getting into like that weird online argument that you always hear. I'm not interested in that talk. It's quite frankly useless and boring, in my opinion. We're going to be talking about like as if as if he's any other candidate. What are your policies and platforms? What are the things you believe in? How do you believe you can get them done? Because this is a party that does not get that kind of representation, while the ideals they espouse seem to be things that would appeal to a lot of people if they were presented in a lot more fair manner. But anyway, I'm going to be taking a quick break here so I can switch up my screens and pull up the info for the next subjects. So stay with me. I'm just going to be taking like a 5-minute break here. All right. Okay, everybody. I still have his picture up there. Let's get rid of that. All right. Welcome to the next segment. Just pulled up a couple things here. Right now, here, let me pull up this tweet here. Matt Leck of the Left Reckoning podcast retweeting here. Joe Manchin wants this to be your house someday. Right now, Manville, New Jersey, only they flooded, but this house is on fire, and no firefighters can reach the homes. Much of New York flooded. In New Jersey, evidently, from the hurricane. And this is just going to keep getting worse. I hate to be a doomer about it here, but this stuff is not getting any better, you know? Wild. There we go. Okay. So, that's something we have to look forward to now. Is more of this sort of thing. Kind of like odd that we had an extremely hot summer here in Toronto, and suddenly it's just not. September hit, and now we're kind of chilly, like jacket weather, But yeah, the evidently part of it is these wild temperature fluctuations, along with the heat waves and what have you. And then here's another thing. In California, fire conditions are so intense that they are once again spawning fire tornadoes. Just west of Temecula. Is that how you say that? Not sure how you say that. But, yeah. Fire tornadoes. That's what we got now. And this is what's wild to me, in that even with this election, this federal election happening, that the sense of urgency around climate change doesn't seem to be a whole lot there. I personally would like to see a whole lot more concern put in that direction, a bigger sense of urgency. I've virtually heard almost nothing from the Green Party. Nobody really talking about the Green Party platform as far as I've seen. And the fact that a town in BC burnt down because it got so hot. And again, this sense of urgency around climate change. Sure, NDP is presenting a climate change plan, but I think the sense of urgency should be a little bit greater, my humble opinion. And yeah, it's just we had Greta Thunberg just a few years ago, giving her impassioned speech that the world both fell in love with and a lot of quite bitter people hated. At least I would regard them as quite bitter people. I wouldn't know how else to describe somebody who would be hating on somebody who's a concerned kid for the condition of the world and the pollution problem that we all very well know is there, Yeah. Like, none of this is new. Inconvenient Truth was what, in the 90s or early 2000s? Um, we've been talking about this stuff for a long time. And now it's quite aggressively knocking on our door. It's kicking down the door. Where is the sense of urgency? It becomes a bit disillusioning, and you kind of can't blame the sort of doomer mindset when nobody essentially is treating this with the sense of urgency that is required, and the same lack of sense of urgency that you saw from many world leaders in regards to this pandemic. That when we see when shit hits the fan, that our leaders, in a lot of ways, will just leave us to die. And disturbingly, we seem a little bit too comfortable with that. Yeah, I don't know. Sigh, long sigh. Anyway, I was going to get to the topic of homelessness and kind of cross over into everything else, but it looks like I've already filled up the hour yakking about that other stuff. Didn't really time out the show in that way. Sometimes I would just go overtime, but like I said earlier, I am zonked, folks. I am quite. I'm exhausted today, so I apologize. And but next week I have a big show to look forward to in interviewing Cam Scott of the Communist Party of Canada. And I look forward to doing that and hearing what he has to say. And yeah, that's so I feel a little bit pumped and rejuvenated to have the privilege to do something like that, and hope to do more stuff like that in the future. So stay tuned for next Wednesday on the Rough Report. And as always, I gotta get him. Gotta go get him. Where's my boy? Where's my... Yeah, there he is. As always, here is Antifa Duck, the leader of Antifa, this duck. Believe he signs the checks, even though the money's funneled through George Soros to Antifa. This duck signs and distributes the checks. So all hail the true the leader of Antifa, this duck. And thank you for tuning in to the Rough Report. I am probably going to